Hello, welcome to the second grading period. And in today's video, I will be discussing the first topic for this grading period, and that is demand. To start, let us first define the word demand. Demand is defined as the number of goods and services that consumers are willing and able to buy at alternative prices at a given period of time. So there are 5 items that you have to remember for demand. First, we have is number, and then willing. Next is able. The fourth one is buy, and lastly, prices. So number that refers to the quantity of items. And then willing, the willingness of the consumer. Do you really want to buy it? That's willing. And then for able, it means the ability of the consumer. Can the consumer really afford to buy a particular item? The fourth one is to buy. Of course, this is the key, one of the keywords for demand, to buy. And lastly, we have prices, and that is the amount you're willing to pay in order to obtain or in order to buy a particular good or service. We have to look into the relationship of the price and demand. And there are 4 ways in which we could study the relationship of price and demand. So first we have demand function, followed by demand schedule. Third is demand curve, and lastly, law of demand. The first one is we have demand function. So demand function is a mathematical expression. As you can see here, we have QD equals A minus BP. So this is the mathematical equation or expression used in studying demand. So for QD, that is the quantity demanded. A, that is the Q or the x-intercept, which means the quantity demanded when the price is set as 0. And then B, this is the slope, the negative slope, or the inverse slope. And lastly, we have P, which is price. So again, demand function, it is a mathematical expression which shows the inverse relationship of quantity demanded and price. So inverse, it means opposite, meaning if the quantity demanded is increasing, the price will be decreasing. Again, inverse, it means opposite. So this is how we are going to use the demand function. So in this first part, we are going to get the quantity demand. So we have here an example. Demand function, QD equals 400 minus 2P. So 400 and 2 are both given. So this is the demand function that we're going to use. Again, we are going to get the quantity demand. So there is also a price given here, 60. So the first thing that you have to do is just substitute the value to the demand function. So this is the demand function, QD equals 400 minus 2P. And then in this problem or in this given, the price is already given, which is 60. So we are going to substitute this value of 60 to letter P. So you will write it as QD equals 400 minus 2 times 60. Again, 60 is the price given. And then next, you're going to multiply 2 and 60. So that will be QD equals 400 minus 120 because 2 times 60, that's 120. And once you're done with the multiplication, you will now proceed with the subtraction. So QD is equal to 400 minus 120, and that will be 280. So the quantity demand is 280. Meaning, if a product is sold for 60 pesos, 280 pieces will be bought. And that is quantity demand. Now let us proceed to the second part of the computation. In the first part, the given was the price. But in this example, what is given is the QD, or the quantity demand. And the price is missing. So that is what we're going to try to get in this portion. So first, we have to substitute the value given for QD. And again, that is 200. So we will write it as 200 equals 400 minus 2p. Again, 200, that is QD. Next step, we have to isolate this portion. So we are going to transfer 400 to the other side. So that will be 200 minus 400 equals negative 2p. 400 got the negative sign because you transposed it. Whenever you are transposing a value, this value will be getting the opposite sign. So let's say, for instance, what you transferred is negative 400. When you transfer it, it will be positive 400. In this case, we moved or we transposed 400 with positive sign, so it became negative. So again, it is 200 minus 400 equals 2p, equals negative 2p. Once you're done, you will now proceed with subtraction because our sign here is subtraction. So 200 minus 400, that is negative 200. It will carry the sign of the value which is greater. In this case, 400, negative 400 is greater than positive 200. That's why the sign is negative. And then just copy equals negative 2p. So once you're done with the subtraction, you are now going to proceed with division. Why? Because we have to eliminate this value beside the letter P. So dapat only letter P would remain in this side. So in order to eliminate this number, we are going to divide both sides with the same value beside the letter. In this case, this is negative 2p. So what will happen is that you will divide both sides with negative 2. So negative 200 divided by negative 2 equals negative 2p divided by negative 2. So negative 200 divided by negative 2, that is 100. And then negative 2p divided by negative 2, just cancel 2. What will remain is, of course, p. So the answer is price is 100. So the negative sign is canceled because both values have negative sign. So what remained are 100 and P. So this means that 200 items will be bought if the price of the item is 100. So that is how you get the price. Another way to see the relationship between price and demand is through what we call a demand schedule. Demand schedule is basically a table showing the price and the quantity demand. And in this demand schedule or in this table, we can clearly see the inverse relationship of the two variables, which are the price and demand. And here is an example of a demand schedule. So again, demand schedule is just a table showing quantity, demand, and the price. So we have here different points A to F. So point A, that is at price 50, the quantity demanded is 0, meaning if the palay, in this example, we're looking into the demand schedule of palay, meaning if palay is sold for, let's say, 50 pesos per kilo, the quantity demanded will be 0, meaning nobody will buy the palay if it is priced at 50. But if we decrease the price to 45, the quantity demand will increase to 20. So from 0 kilo of palay, it will increase to 20 kilos of palay. So this is an example of a demand schedule. Again, here we can clearly see the inverse relationship of quantity demand and the price. Here, in quantity demand, it is increasing, whereas in price, this is decreasing. And another way to see the relationship of price and demand is what we call the demand curve. So if demand schedule is a table, demand curve is a graphical representation. So here is an example. So here is an example of a demand curve. So in this example, we also have the demand curve of palay. So in the y-axis, we can see here the price, and for the x-axis, or the horizontal lines, we can see here the quantity demand. And if you would remember in the demand function, I mentioned about negative slope or inverse slope. That's why in the demand curve, you can see here that this one is decreasing. So it starts high and then it goes low. So this is the inverse relationship of of price and quantity demand. And last, for the relationship between demand and price, we have the law of demand. So the law of demand, it explains how people react every time price changes in terms of the quantities of the product that they purchase. So to show you clearly, this is the law of demand. So this is what I've been mentioning earlier. As quantity demand increases, the price decreases. Or as the price increases, quantity demand decreases. This is the law of demand. How are people reacting to the changes in the price? So if the price decreases, again, the quantity would increase. Although price is the major determinant of demand, it is not the only factor which should be considered. There are also other determinants which affect the demand. So, in order for you to remember the determinants of demand easily, I came up with an acronym, and that is POPI. So, what do these letters mean? So, first we have population, and then O, occasion, preference, price of related products, income, and lastly, we have expectation. So these are the different determinants of demand. And here are the examples for each of the determinant of demand. So first, let's go with population. So population, for instance, demand would increase if, for instance, let's say in your family, you originally have 3 members. But when your parents gave birth to your sibling, the population in your family increased. Therefore, with the increase in the population in your family, there would also be an increase in the demand. Let's say, for instance, before when you were just three in the family, you were consuming 1 kilo of rice. But when there was an additional sibling, then the demand for rice increased. From 1 kilo of rice, it increased to 1 and 1/4 kilo. So that is population as a determinant of demand. Next, we have occasion. So example here is during Valentine's Day. So there is an increase in the demand for stuff related to Valentine's Day. For instance, chocolate, flowers, balloons. A lot of people want to buy those stuff during Valentine's Day. So that is occasion as a determinant of demand. And next one, we have preference. So this one is observable here in the Philippines. With the with the rise of Hallyu or Korean wave, more and more Filipinos are becoming inclined with Korean culture. That is why there's a rise in the number of Korean restaurants, like samgyeopsal houses. So that is an example of preference. When we are inclined in a particular stuff or thing, then the demand for that particular item increases. The next determinant of demand is what we call the price of related product. So let's say, for instance, the price of cereal decreased. There's a discount for cereal. Of course, you're not going to buy just cereal. You need to buy milk because, of course, when you eat cereal, there should be milk. So with the decrease in the price of cereal, people or consumers are encouraged to buy cereal. And of course, when they buy cereal, they need to buy milk. Therefore, there would also be an increase in the demand for milk. Next one, we have income. So let's say, for instance, you have your daily allowance of 100 pesos. So with your 100 pesos, you are buying one shomai rice in the morning, and then one shomai rice in lunch, and then another shomai rice in the afternoon snack. But with the increase of your income, or in this case, your allowance, then there would also be an increase in your demand. So you can buy more. Let's say you're going to buy one shawmai rice in the morning, and then two shawmai rice in lunch, and then one shawmai rice in the afternoon snack. So there is an increase in the demand because the income of the people are also increasing. Or likewise, if the income decreases, the demand would also decrease. And lastly, we have expectation. So let's say, for instance, in this case that we are experiencing right now, the pandemic that we are experiencing right now with COVID. So because when the government announced that there would be a lockdown, a lot of people went to the groceries to buy more food supplies or anything that they would need for the lockdown. So, because people were expecting that there might be shortage of supply, therefore they have to buy before those supply is gone. So that is expectation. So we have here a demand curve. Again, here we can see the relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. And here we can see that as the price is decreasing, the quantity demand is increasing. So from 5, at price 5, the demand is 10. If the price is decreased to 4, then the quantity demand increased to, let's say, 20. So this is price as a determinant of demand. But like what I mentioned, price is not the only thing that determines the demand. we can see here that there is a shift in the demand curve. So here, we are not going to consider the price. The price would remain constant. So as you can see here, the price is only 60. But there is a shift of demand to the right. From 500, the demand increased to 600 with price remaining constant. What is the reason for that? Let's see. So these are the reason why the demand increased despite having the same price. So we have again product preference, increase in income, occasion, increase in number of consumers, expectation and speculation, and price decrease of complementary product. Or let's say for instance in the case of milk and cereal. So again, if there would be increase in demand with the same price, the demand curve would shift to the right. Again, it would shift to the right. Now, what will happen to the demand curve if there would be decrease in demand? Let's see. If there would be a decrease in the demand with the same price, the demand curve would shift to the left. So here, this is demand curve 1. It would shift or it would move to the left if there is a decrease in the demand, brought about by several factors, such as decrease in income, decrease in the number of consumers. Consumers do not speculate or there is no expectation. Price increase of a complementary goods. Again, for instance, the milk and the cereal. If cereal's price increase, then of course the demand for milk might decrease as well. Might decrease. No occasion. So example would be the Christmas tree. If there's no uh yeah, if there's no events just Christmas, then there would be no demand for Christmas tree. And last is price decrease in substitute goods. So the next part, we have the elasticity of demand. So elasticity of demand is defined as the degree of responsiveness of the changes in the demand for a product relative to changes in prices. For example, the price of a particular item increased by 1%. How much would the demand change? That is elasticity of demand. There are three types of elasticity. We have inelastic, elastic, and lastly we have unitary. For inelastic, when we solve for the elasticity, the value that we would get is less than 1, meaning consumers' response is less than the price change. Let's say, for instance, the price changed by 1%, the reaction of the consumer is less than 1%, meaning it's almost not changing the demand. Why? Because the item or the product is really needed. Let's say, for example, Meralco or electricity. Even if it increases its price, the demand really will not change that much. That's why the type of elasticity is inelastic. The next one we have elastic. Elasticity is greater than 1, meaning consumers' response is more than the price change. So this happens usually in things which are not really needed, things which are not considered necessities. So let's say, for instance, there's a price change of 1%. The response of the people would be more than 1%. Again, because they don't really need the item. So if the price would increase, then they can choose not to consume those products rather. The last type of elasticity is unitary, where elasticity is equal to 1. So when we solve for the elasticity, the value that we would get is exactly equal to 1, which means if the price would increase by 1%, the decrease for the demand is also 1%. So they're equal. If there would be increase in the price by 2%, that the demand would decrease by 2%. So that is unitary. So this is how to get the elasticity. We have here the formula price elasticity equals percentage delta Q over percentage delta P. When you see the symbol triangle, this is called delta, which refers to change. So this is going to be percentage change in quantity over percentage change in price. So we're going to use the midpoint formula. Expanding this one will be like this. So Q2 minus Q1 over Q1 plus Q2 divided by 2 all over P2 minus P1 equals P1 plus P2 divided by 2. So this part is the change in price. So we have here an example so that you can check how to use the formula. So what we have here an example, the givens are for initial price, we have 40. For final price, we have 45. Initial quantity 10, and final quantity we have 5. We are going to substitute these values to the formula for the price elasticity. So the first thing that you have to do is again substitute the given values to the formula. So we have here the formula Q2 minus Q1. So let's substitute first. What is the value of Q2? Q2 is 5. So substitute 5. And then for Q1, we have 10. So substitute 10 divided by Q1. Q1 is again 10. So substitute 10. And then plus Q2, you need to substitute 5. Q2 is 5. So it's going to be 5 minus 10 divided by 10 plus 5 divided by 2. So that's the first step. Next one, of course, we also have to substitute the value to the denominator. So P2 minus P1. P2 is 45. So we have here 45 minus P1, which is 40. So 4 minus 40. And then let's go to the lower part. P1 plus P2. Again, P1 is 40 and P2 is 45. So now we have all the values substituted in the formula. So after that, we have to simplify. So let's go first to the topmost part. So here, this portion. So 5 minus 10 divided by, let's go to the lower part, 10 plus 5 divided by 2. And then 45 minus 40 divided by 40 plus 45 divided by 2. So let's go here to the topmost part. 5 minus 10, that is going to be negative 5. And then next, let's proceed to the values inside the parentheses. So 10 plus 5, that is going to be 15. Okay, and just copy, divide by 2. Now let's go to the denominator. So 45 minus 40, it is going to be 5. And then next, the last, 40 plus 45, that is 85. And then again, copy divided by 2. So to simplify it further, we're going to proceed with the division part. So let's just copy negative 5 and then divide 15 divided by 2. That is 7.5. Then copy again 5 and then proceed with the division of the last part. 85 divided by 2, that is 42.5. Following so far? Alright, so the next part, since we have already simplified this one, we are going to take the reciprocal of the denominator. So we are just going to reverse. So this lower part, or the lowest portion, will go on top, and then this one will be at the bottom. So it will be like this. Let's just copy the numerator, this one, copy it as is. So it's the negative 5 divided by 7.5. Since we're going to reciprocate this, we are going to multiply them. We're no longer going to divide. So it will be like this, 42.5 divided by 5. So this is how it's going to look. So you are going to multiply the numerators and the denominator. So negative 5 times 42.5 and 7.5 times 5. And the answer will be negative 212.5 divided by 37.5. So this is negative because one value in the numerator is negative. So again, when we multiply negative and positive, it will, or when we multiply two unlike sign, it will be negative. Again, it's negative 212.5 divided by 37.5. And now you have to proceed with division. The answer will be negative 5.67. Always round it off to two decimal places. And last would be taking the absolute value. So for price elasticity of demand, we are always going to use the absolute value. It will always be negative. That's why we are going to take the absolute value, meaning always the positive. And this is the final price elasticity of demand for this example. And this is under what type? It is elastic. So this is how you get the price elasticity of demand.